As I promised, we have Tevi from BDC. As I mentioned, she has a great presentation for you guys here today, but as I mentioned, BDC and specifically Tevi, they're very much like Community Futures, and we work very closely hand in hand with BDC. And they wear a lot of hats. So she's going to be touching on marketing. She's going to be touching on a few other things as well. But if you guys have questions, feel free to ask her. Between the two of us, we'll be able to answer your questions. I'm fairly confident, definitely.
Yes. So today I'm going to touch on marketing, but what I do is commercial lending. So if you guys have any questions around startup capital, venture capital, growth, capital for growth, anything like that, we can answer those questions at the end of the presentation. So as I go through the marketing piece, if there's anything that pops into your head in regards to financing, write it down. We can address it at the end of the presentation. So a lot of what I do is marketing too, so I'm going to touch on both. So just a show of hands, if you're here in pairs, can everyone who's an entrepreneur and one from the pair put up their hand so I can get a count of how many entrepreneurs or businesses are being represented? 1, 2, 3. Okay. So does anybody have an elevator pitch? Are you willing to share it?
Guess so.
Okay.
What we're trying to do is a Lethbridge Makerspace.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know what a makerspace is, it's like a gym membership, but instead of buying a membership to use fitness equipment, you buy a membership to use industrial equipment, laser cutters, industrial sewing machines, 3D printers, things like that.
Cool.
Open to the public.
Yeah.
Also offering learning programs so that we can actually teach you and train you on the equipment so that you're not going to hurt yourself or damage the equipment. So if any of you have an idea that you want to prototype, but you don't want to spend $15,000, $20,000 prototyping it, a month or two long membership can actually help you guys to develop a prototype, and we want to be able to teach you to take it from a napkin drawing to actually selling it online or selling it in the retail store.
Wow, that's great. Great idea. Anybody else have an elevator pitch they want to share? Sure.
So my company is Living Water Apparel, and the elevator pitch would be, have you ever thought of risking your life on a glass of water? And of course, you probably haven't. But over 900 million people around the world risk their lives daily because of the lack of access to clean drinking water.
Oh, interesting.
And through our clothing brand, we donate to water projects to hopefully change that.
Very cool. Anybody else want to share? Sure, go ahead.
I'm a safety consultant, so I build and monitor safety programs for companies of all shapes and sizes. What I've tried to do is make sure that the company is in compliance with the legislation, and that should lead to reduced injury, increased productivity, and increased profitability.
Great. Very good. So an elevator speech is definitely something you should be thinking about as an entrepreneur. It's your 30-second kind of features, advantages, benefits of your company or what you're doing. And it's important, especially in smaller communities like Lethbridge, because you're constantly running into people that potentially could be clients, business partners, people, influential people that could help get the word out about your company. So it's important to think about that. So maybe take note, practice it, because sometimes it's hard. The more you think about it, the harder it is, when really it's something that probably could be really easy. Keep it short so that if you do run into somebody, you can tell them what you do in kind of 30 seconds or less. And that's one of the best ways to market your business, especially in smaller communities, because word of mouth goes much further than you think. At BDC, so I work for the Business Development Bank of Canada. We're a Crown corporation, and we're mandated to support entrepreneurs. That is all we do. We are entrepreneurs first. So what we do is we provide financing, consulting, and venture capital for entrepreneurs. And we are a for-profit company. Our money is not grant money. It's money that you borrow and pay back. We fund our own money, so our money comes from our profits that we lend out. And every year we pay a dividend back to the government. Last year we paid $67 million back to the government from the profits that we made. We aren't like any other bank because we don't have deposits, we don't have credit cards, we don't have multiple levels, we don't have investment accounts, anything like that. We're strictly dedicated to entrepreneurs. We're here to help you grow, expand, start, globalize. We can take you international. We have all the resources that you would need to get to where you want to be. So keep that in mind, bdc.ca. BDC is French. It started in Montreal, so it's the Business Development Bank of Canada in English. It's a bit kind of not great marketing because the acronym isn't actually fit in English. So I'll talk a little bit more about marketing to you guys, and if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to interrupt me. We won't be super formal tonight. Oh.
Oh, it's not. Going next.
Spacebar?
Back to
I have a question. So at
Sure.
what point is somebody no longer an entrepreneur and they have to no longer be with your bank?
As long as you're running a business,
Considered.
you're a shareholder, even if you're a sole proprietor, you're considered an entrepreneur.
No.
Yeah. If you're a shareholder in a business, it can be publicly traded, it can be private business. If you're a sole proprietor, if it's in a partnership, there's lots of different things we can consider business. As long as you're engaging in something where you're trying to generate revenue for business purposes, I guess. If that makes sense. Yeah, there we go. Marketing is a word that has been around forever, and I think it's evolved a lot because of the digital era, and what we see and the way that we can do things now is much different than even 5 years ago. So I'll just let you guys read this slide quickly. So it's all about communication. So as an entrepreneur or a budding entrepreneur, what does marketing mean to you guys? Can anybody share what's your perspective of marketing? What does it mean to you as an entrepreneur? How important is it?
Persuasion.
Pardon?
It means persuasion.
Preservation?
No, persuade.
Oh, persuade, yes.
Yeah.
You're trying to modify behavior or influence somebody's behavior to maybe buy your product, use your service. Yep. Anything else? Yeah?
Maybe targeting the most possible clients at the least possible cost with more convenient
That's
benefits.
a great example, yeah. So you're trying to target your audience in the most cost-effective way, right? Especially as a startup. You definitely want to make your marketing dollars go as far as you possibly can, and you want to use the right avenues to make sure you're targeting the audience that you need to target to get to your product or service. So depending on the type of business that you have, marketing will probably mean something a little bit different to each of you. It's about customer needs, it's about developing demand, customer satisfaction. If you have continuously have unhappy customers and that gets out, that's going to have a negative impact on your sales, on your revenue. And value. People want to feel like you're adding value to their life. So how can you convince them through marketing that you can add value with your product or service? Keep these things in mind when you're thinking about your marketing plan or the piece in your business plan that's going to be on marketing. So marketing versus selling. What's the difference?
Marketing is communicating and selling is making money.
Okay.
I was gonna say marketing is more broad, where selling is more one-on-one.
Yep. So focused or driven. Communicating versus actually generating the revenue.
So the actual transaction is selling.
Yeah. So does one rely on the other or vice versa? Can you do one without the other?
You can sell
You need to
them.
sell things.
Yeah, go ahead.
You need to sell things to have a budget for marketing. You need to market in order to get customers to sell them something.
Yes. So which comes first? No. Yeah, exactly. So they're definitely tied together. And the difference is that marketing is about the communication and the way that you're going to do things, and selling is about the actual transaction, like you said, to actually generate the revenue to help you create that budget to be able to do that marketing. This is the 4 Ps of marketing started in like 1960 from an age-old marketer, and he created the 4 Ps. You guys maybe have heard these before. Maybe. So this is something to definitely write down and keep in mind when you're looking at doing your marketing plan or your marketing piece in your business plan for the Chinook Entrepreneur Challenge. Jerome E. McCarthy. So in 1960, and these have been used by marketers throughout the world ever since. If you were to take a basic marketing class in university, it will focus on the 4 Ps of marketing: product, price, promotion, place. I'm going to go into detail on each of the 4 Ps, and these are the things you need to keep in mind when you're thinking about taking your product or service to market. You need to make sure that you're covering off each one of these. It's very important to have success in the sale of your product or service. So what is a product? Does a product always have to be something that's tangible?
No.
No. So you see up here I have some examples. A tangible product is a physical thing that you can put your hands on. An intangible product could be something like an operating system. It could be a service. It could be a tow truck service. It could be like what you're talking about with your company, where you're providing a little bit of both, where people maybe aren't necessarily buying the product, but they're buying the training to learn how to use this equipment to maybe develop something that they want to develop, right? So it's important that you think about what you're trying to sell and make sure you can clarify whether it's a tangible or intangible product. So what is a product to you guys? Oh, look at this. Keep this on your mind, and what, like the word product, what does that mean to you? We're bombarded with products, yes.
Something you can sell to somebody else, but it's something that I think that they would more use as opposed to a service.
Right, so it's something to satisfy the consumer demand. A product is always developed, or you think of something, you think of an idea because in your mind there was demand at some point in your life and you saw maybe a gap in the marketplace. You thought that this was something that could be useful, even if it was a service or a product. And so products are developed based on demand, consumer demand. Some have more demand than others, and usually those are the ones that are more successful. But usually it always comes from a place of demand or a thought process that you think that there would be demand for this based on whatever you're creating. Another thing about a product is every product has a life cycle. And if you think about Apple, they do this really well. We get annoyed because it's always update your operating system, update this, update that, iPhone 6, 6S or whatever, everything, there's constantly changing products. It's because what Apple does is they pinpoint the demand before the actual demand happens. And so what happens is they're creating these products before the demand hits, so they can, it's almost like they're anticipating the consumer's needs before the needs actually happen, and then they change the product. So they do the research on their own products, they look for the gaps, and then they change the product, update the operating systems, all those kind of things to satisfy the anticipated need that might come from the consumer. That's hard to do. Apple's really good at it. They have lots of money. They can be really good at that. But every product has a life cycle, and you'll notice how the life cycle works because there's a growth phase and a mature phase, and then eventual period of decline, which maybe it becomes outdated. So if you think of things like technology, hardware and stuff, that easily comes to mind, but every product does have a life cycle. So keep that in mind, that when you're creating your product, you're probably very focused on the here and now of this exact product or service that you're creating, but maybe try and anticipate, especially in your business plan, anticipate the life cycle of the product and try and anticipate 2 or 3 years down the road, how might this change? How might the demand change from the consumer? What else could I add to this product? What could I change? What could I do? Constantly think about the life cycle and about how your product or your service can evolve with the marketplace and the demands of the consumer. So think about what you're doing and try and think about 2 to 3 years down the road. What is your product going to look like 3 years from now? What is your service going to look like? Does it have the backbone to survive or sustain itself in the economy? Is the consumer going to demand it enough? Is there going to be a consistent demand? What's the life cycle going to look like? Draw it out. It's important because every product and service has a life cycle. Price is the next P. So price is all about pricing, and there's a few different strategies people use to price their products. There's 3 basic pricing strategies that we see a lot of. There's market skimming, or price skimming, which is a strategy where the price is set high in the beginning to cover some of the sunk costs that you might have incurred when you were developing your product, when you were in the think tank stage of your service. Because a lot of times, a lot of our resources, what we see with a lot of our startup companies is so much of the capital in the beginning is invested to getting this thing off the ground that it's hard to recover the costs right off the bat. 80% of our startups fail. That's a very high number. So you have to really keep that in mind. If you're going to invest all this money, if you're going to borrow money to invest into this product or service, you can't be underpricing yourself. You can't underestimate yourself either. There's no reason to think what you're doing should be worth less money. Pricing is so important. It doesn't mean you have to price yourself the highest to recover the cost right off the bat, but it's important to think about what your product and service is and that you price it in the marketplace appropriately. Because you don't want to end up year 2, you can't pay back your loan, and your business is going under because you underpriced yourself in year 1. It's so important. Pricing, you should spend a lot of time on pricing. You guys know sunk costs are costs. It's an accounting term. Sunk costs are costs that you'll never get back. So costs that you have to sink into a project because you have no choice, but it's costs that you can never really get back on that project. So the second type of pricing is called penetration pricing, and it's the opposite of price skimming. So that's when you start your pricing too low, and then you have to escalate it to recover your costs. So you want to be careful there because the same thing can happen. If you underprice yourself, and then people have this expectation that you're low priced, and they associate maybe not great quality with it being the cheapest in the marketplace, and all of a sudden you raise your prices, you could potentially lose part of your customer base. So it's important to think about that when you're doing your pricing. Maybe price somewhere in between. And don't underestimate yourself. Don't overestimate yourself. Think about if your product or service is a niche, if nobody else offers it, that's very important to think about. If the market is flooded with your product or service, you'll want to think about pricing maybe a little bit lower off the bat. If there's no barriers to entry for anybody else to do what you're doing, because once you start doing your product or service or business, there's really anybody can do what you're doing unless you have knowledge or skills that not everybody has. So think about the barriers to entry. If someone that you know was to start up the exact business idea that you have today, could they do the exact same thing and be successful at it? What are the barriers to entry? You could say, no, they can't because I have this skill set. I went to school, I know how to use these tools. I have this knowledge, I have a patent on this product. Maybe there's reasons why there's barriers to entry, but maybe there's no barriers to entry. So keep that in mind for your competition and your pricing. What are the barriers to entry for the marketplace for someone to come in and do exactly what you want to do? Because it happens. Unfortunately, it happens. We see it all the time. And there's really no way around that. It's just the way that the world of entrepreneurship works, right? And the last one is differential value. So it's about the consumer's perceived value of the product or service. So it's important to keep that in mind. Maybe that's when you could get a focus group together. Maybe you do a survey, something like that, to see what does the general public think this is worth. Those are easy to do. You can do them through social media. You can get a focus group together. You can ask your peers here, what do you guys think this is worth? What would you pay for this? What would you pay for this product? What would you pay for this service? So make sure you keep those things in mind when you're generating the price. So I have a short video for you guys here about price. If it works.
Little block pop-up.
Oh, we did it?
Yeah, in the, that was probably the top there.
We can't see it. Can I open the URL? Can I watch it? Okay. Is there a sound?
I'm just gonna allow the,
Okay. Can you make that? Thanks. That's great.
Farmer Joe's Market has continued to
shop at Rocco. Some pricing strategies, so just keep those things in mind. It kind of makes it easier to think about with something when it's simplified like that. Keep that in mind when you're thinking about your pricing strategy for your project, for your product. Right here?
Yeah, that's the,
There we go. P. The next P is promotion. This one's really important. We see a lot of different avenues nowadays with TV and radio and social media and advertising on banners and billboards, and there's so many different ways to do it. So what promotion is all methods of communication that are used to provide information to your target market or your audience. Like I said, advertising, public relations, talking to groups of people, there's all different ways we can do it. I have another video for you guys to watch. It's the Super Bowl commercials. Hopefully nothing's too offensive to anybody. It's the top 10 commercials from the Super Bowl this year. Each one you'll notice the product, and keep in mind what the focus is for the commercial. Do you really understand what the product is? What emotion do you feel when you see the commercial? And does that commercial make you want to buy the product? So keep that in mind when you're watching these. Think about your own product and how maybe you would you use humor? Would you be serious in how you advertise? Like, think about lots of these are pretty humorous, but lots of them sometimes draw an emotion as well. So think about how would you promote your product or service? What kind of emotion do you want to draw from out of your audience? How do you think, which emotion do you think would sell your product or service the best? This one might get blocked again. Okay, so out of those commercials, products, emotions, which commercial stood out to you guys the most?
Well, for me, it was the ones that kind of brought up something that was relevant in pop culture recently.
Yeah.
So, like the Steve Harvey one, and then that Taco Bell one that was full of references.
Yeah.
So those kind of ones stuck out for me.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think the Prius one because it was actually exciting to actually see yourself in the product, I guess.
Yeah, like because of the police chase and you got to follow it along.
Yeah, the rest
and
were kind of like more humorous, whereas this one just had more
excitement, like a climax almost.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah.
I didn't get the cheese thing, but
And
I
that's a
did-
good example of audience,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
exactly. It's
that's
like, I don't know
important.
how-
It's
who
important to
happens
point
with that.
that out because it's something you should keep in mind when you're developing your promotional means for your product or service. So, sorry, go ahead.
And the Coke one because grandma.
The Brotherhood
Yeah.
one? I like
It's
that
like
one
the
too.
the whole family
Yeah.
thing, right?
I have 3 boys, so
Yeah.
I like the brother one
Yeah.
too. Yeah, yeah. Anybody else? So, I mean, just keep in mind, I mean, if your product or service is something that you feel like you need to create demand when you're doing your promotional stuff, think about the kind of emotions you might want to draw on if you're trying to create demand versus is the demand already there in the marketplace and you're just providing, you're filling that gap or that need, that consumer need with a product or service where the demand is already there, or do you need to create the demand through promotion? So keep that in mind when you're looking at doing your marketing and developing your promotional pieces for your product or service. So I guess we found the ones that drew on emotion were pretty effective. The ones that related to pop culture were pretty effective because you knew the people in the video. We like the one that's actually a story. It kind of has a beginning, a middle, and an end, so you can follow it along because it's more exciting than maybe some of the other ones. So keep those things in mind when you're looking to develop your own story for your own product or service. The last P is place. I like to call it placement. It's about product placement, and this can mean a few different things. It can, depending on your product or your service, it can mean where you're actually physically located in the marketplace, or it can mean your distribution channels. How are you going to distribute your product? It can mean in promotional items, where is there embedded marketing like they do on American Idol with, I don't know if they still do Coke because I haven't watched it in a while, but this is obviously old. But you see the Coke cups on American Idol there, so that's embedded marketing. Is there opportunities for you to maybe provide your product or service with your brand or your logo on it in a way that you could actually reach customers like this? Like for me, I represent BDC. I get to be here tonight to talk about marketing, but ultimately at the end, you'll see the BDC brand. And that's kind of embedded marketing for me because I can represent the company that I work for, but I'm here to actually talk about something else. So think about opportunities for yourself, whether it's maybe it's volunteering, maybe it's donating something, and that way you get some product placement in there. I've seen the donating piece actually hurt startup businesses because it's almost like you're trying to buy business through your own goodwill, so be careful with that. I've seen that hurt a lot of companies because people will take advantage of that. The marketplace will take advantage of that. So you are worth something, your product is worth something, your service is worth something. Don't underestimate that. It's okay to maybe donate things once in a while, but just because you're trying to get started doesn't mean you need to be giving away the world. So make sure you keep that in mind. There's a fine line, a fine balance between positioning yourself or aligning yourself with maybe the right situations to get brand awareness, and maybe those are the times where you donate or you volunteer your time or whatever it might be, versus constantly donating and not really getting anything in return for it. So keep that in mind. And then even product placement there. So that was embedded marketing. Product placement, like drive-thrus is a good example because before drive-throughs, you had to physically get up and go in. So this is just another way companies can provide you with their products in a more convenient way. So think about convenience when you're thinking about your distribution channels, your product placement, those types of things. Does most consumers like convenience? I'm a mom of 3 young kids. I live off convenience. So I don't want to get 3 kids out of the car if I don't have to. I'll go through to every drive-through in town until I get what I need to get. And so keep that in mind. Keep your audience in mind. What are they like? What are their behaviors like? Will they get out of the car to go to your product? Does it need to be delivered to their door? What is your distribution going to look like? Do you need to partner with somebody to help with that distribution? Can you do it yourself? Do you have the space to store what you need to store if the demand is there? It's overwhelming. I know that. I work with entrepreneurs every day of my life. I know that starting a business can be very overwhelming because there is so much to think about. Just take it one step at a time. You guys are in the right place. This is a great program to help you get all the pieces put together because you kind of have to need to know a little bit about everything. So you might be really good at what you do or the product or service that you offer, but you might not be great at accounting. You might not be great at marketing. You might not be great at sales, but this is a great program to help you learn that those things are important and that there's lots of resources out there, Community Futures, BDC. So if you need help with those things, that's when you come and ask. So there is only 4 Ps, but I think there could be like 27 Ps now because of digital marketing. The 4 Ps were really developed in the 60s, way before the digital era. So things have obviously evolved since then. They talk about new Ps being people, participation, personalization, product, process, pay, partner. I'm sure you guys could think of examples of products or services that could relate to all of those. I'm sure there's other Ps that you could probably create yourself or think of yourself. What I would say about digital marketing in our day and age is you have to have it as part of your marketing plan. It's cheap, it's effective. Everybody has a phone. Everybody uses their phone. Make sure you have a digital marketing piece in your marketing plan. It's very, very important. So do some research on it. Find out what avenue is best for you because there's so many different avenues through social media. But make sure you include a digital piece in your marketing plan. I have one more little video here and then we'll wrap up and go to questions. This is about smartphones.
There's a
which you should be developing websites. Is your website gonna be mobile? Is there a mobile version? So if someone's looking on their phone, will it be compressed? Where is that one? There we go. So keep that in mind. I could probably do a whole 5 more sessions on like search engine optimization, Google AdWords, making sure that whatever you're offering pops up in the first top 5 topics in Google. There's a lot to think about. Make sure that if you're creating a website, it can be utilized on a mobile device just the same way that it can be used on a computer. Most people are looking at them on their cell phones. Make sure that the buttons work on a cell phone. Make sure that they have access to actually check out on the cell phone. All those types of things, as you saw the stats there. That's a lot of follow through. If people are going to those ads and 91% of people are actually following through on a transaction on their cell phone, keep that in mind when you're creating your website and doing your marketing. Maybe there's more efficient ways to use advertising via social media or whatever it might be. So do some research in regards to that. Yeah, so that was basically all I had for tonight. My role I work for BDC, like I said earlier. We are a Crown corporation to support and help entrepreneurs grow. I'm the business center manager for the Lethbridge Business Center. We cover Lethbridge, Medicine Hat, all the way up to the Crow's Nest Pass, so basically all of southern Alberta. I don't work with the clients directly anymore. I authorize the loans, so you would work with one of my account managers, but if you have any questions, I have cards here tonight. I can always connect you with one of the account managers if you're looking for some startup capital. Or if you have questions, we can't actually do your business plan for you, but we can answer questions. We work with entrepreneurs, that is all we do. We have a very large portfolio in the area. We've worked with a lot of local businesses. We don't have flashy ads. We don't have big campaigns. The most of what we do is word of mouth, or we're starting a radio campaign up in Edmonton. But yeah, we've helped 30,000 entrepreneurs across Canada, some of them globalizing themselves, becoming worldwide entrepreneurs. We are only 2,000 employees, so we're not a huge company. We lend in the billions of dollars every year, so we lend billions of dollars every year across Canada. We like working with entrepreneurs. We do our startup capital. Our maximum we can do for startups is $150,000. So, and we require a business plan, so it's good that you guys are going through this process if you're going to be looking for startup capital. Come to us early on. Our process takes, a good 6 weeks from start to finish to kind of get funds into your pocket. So if you're very serious about getting your startup off the ground, make sure you come to us early enough so we can do all our due diligence and meet your expectations, manage your expectations, and help you meet your timelines. And check out our website if you haven't already, bdc.ca. There's a ton of good information on there. There's actually a business planning tool on the website. So if you're going through your business plan or going through this process and aren't sure maybe what to include, go onto our website. There's a business planning tool on there. Don't want to give you too many tips. Yeah, but lots of good information. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
You mentioned website optimization and things like that. So is that something you get advice from BDC?
Well, we don't really, only from what we've seen with entrepreneurs, workshops we've attended, we don't really have a lot of information on that other than what we know and have seen through our existing portfolio of entrepreneurs. So I'm no expert in that for sure, but I mean, I know a little bit about it. Yeah. Yes.
My service, I'm doing on-site, like car maintenance
Yeah.
and other things.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of selling convenience as
Yeah.
one of my marketing. How do you know how much you can price up for the convenience?
That's a good question.
Depending on the
That's a really good question. I would think about it probably a 10% margin. around there, it's somewhere in the 5 to 10%. That's something I would definitely consider doing a survey on, creating a survey or getting together a focus group of people that, like moms love convenience, so, you
Also,
know.
I'm doing telematics, which is you connect to your car, right? And you can text me or send me the information through your text.
Oh, interesting.
So it's new technology.
Yeah,
So I can mark up because too, right?
yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure I would be the first one here.
So is that an app? So what you do is like a diagnostic from a distance almost, and
Yeah,
then
like
you
if your
can come
car break-
prepared?
Yeah, if your car breaks down, then you just inspect your car through your smartphone.
Oh,
And then
interesting.
you send me the information. and-
Oh, for sure. I think that's definitely worth a higher margin. Yeah, yeah. Very interesting. Cool idea. Any other questions? Yeah.
In regard to the market research portion and obtaining really specific industry information, like if it's a very small
Yes.
industry,
Yeah.
can we come to you in order to find good and viable sources for that? Because I'm just kind of having some trouble through even, like there's so many good resources even just through the Chinook website, but
Yeah.
I'm still having a bit of trouble with that. So would
I'll leave you, I have some business cards here, I'll leave you one. We have access to a little bit of a larger database based on something called NAICS codes. So in the industry, every business or service has a code attached to it, and there's research kept on those codes. So based on your type of business, you'd fall into a category, a certain industry. If it's super specific, I might not, but we do have access to a database, so let me know and I'll see what I can find for you. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
We're pretty close to time there
Okay.
as well. So thank you, Tabby. That
Thank
was
you guys.
marketing is one of those great intangibles.
Could talk for days.
There's so much information, and you know that the values there. I Googled it real quick.
Yeah.
The average price for a Super Bowl commercial for this year, one went for $5 million for 30 seconds. 30 seconds for $5 million. That was to reach 110 million people that watched the Super Bowl. So the ad that I remembered the most was the wiener dogs running across the field, because all I could think about was what that pitch meeting must have looked like. Where for $10 million, I want to have a bunch of wiener dogs dressed as wieners running across the field. But if anything, that just goes to show you how complex marketing can be. So we actually do have quite a bit that we're going to be talking about in marketing during the rest of the Chinook Entrepreneur Challenge. And I'm just going to open up the last of mine here because we are almost done here. And I just had this last slide that I want to talk to you about. So this is actually next week, this week was location planning, but next week we are going to be talking a little bit about market research, and we are going to be talking about human resources. So we actually have BusinessLink is going to be joining us to talk about the actual market research, and we have a former professor, Cheryl Mahedon, who she's teaching at the college currently. She formerly taught at the university as well, and she has a lot of industry experience in the human resources side. So she's going to give us a little bit of insight into that, okay? We are going to have the YouTube videos up as of tomorrow morning, and I will send an email out to make sure that you guys all get the links. Any questions, get a hold of myself. That's my email address again, both the challenge email and my own personal one. And again, you can get a hold of us on Twitter and Facebook as well. And we're going to start, we've already started putting out some links that may help you along the way that we don't necessarily address in the challenge itself. So definitely check both of those out. Other than that, we actually finished on time tonight, guys. So.
I have business cards and pens if you guys are interested in contacting BDC or need a pen. So feel free to take them here.
And I'll be around to answer